Next, Rubiaceae, the coffee family. This is a large tropical family, but has a number of these northern temperate outliers, which we find here. In the Rubiaceae, the pistil is one and compound with two sections. The ovary is always inferior. Stamens are 4, occasionally 5, but I think in all the ones you're going to see will be 4 stamens. So we have a couple of flowers that have been split open. So you can see 3 of the stamens. The other stamen was ripped away in making the section. The petals are usually 4. They're fused into a narrow tube below, but then it tends to flare and the tips spread out apart. And the free parts of the petals, as they spread apart, form again a cross shape. So this is a cross shape, but not a separate petals, but a fused petals. Sepals are usually 4. They are sometimes small and not very obvious. Leaves are opposite, but the thing that's unusual about the leaves of Rubiaceae is that they have stipules, but the stipules from the leaves on the opposite side of the stem are fused together to make a single stipule on that side of the stem. And then the stipules on the other side of the stem are also fused to make a single stipule on that side of the stem. So you would expect to find 2 leaves and then 2 stipules. Now in some cases, instead of stipules, you have what appear to be whorled leaves. So in the field matters you see here, there are 6 leaves in a whorl at the node. So that is the Rubiaceae. Now we come to the Lamiaceae, or the mint family. The pistil is one and compound, composed of 2 sections, like in the Rubiaceae, but this is really quite different in that the sections in the members of the mint family you're going to see are divided into 2 sections again. So in other words, each section of the ovary is 2-lobed. So that means when the fruit's formed, you end up with 4 nutlets, 1 seed in each of these segments of the ovary. So there were 2 sections, each with 2 lobes. Each lobe has 1 seed each. So you have 4 one-seeded nutlets. You'll also notice that no style is attached to this developing fruit. The style falls off very quickly. Now that's going to be important in comparing this family to the next family. There are 4 stamens, 2 long ones and 2 short ones. Now you can see in this illustration that the short ones are not much shorter than the long ones, but they are enough shorter to say that they're 2 long and 2 short. So that combination of 2 plus 2 is highly characteristic of this family. Petals are 5, and they usually form a 2-lipped flower. So now I need to explain that a little bit. You have the 5 petals. You have 3 on the lower side that fuse together more strongly together to form a lower lip. The 2 on the upper side are more strongly fused together to each other, and they form an upper lip. Now, in this illustration of the dead nettle, the 2 upper petals are so strongly fused that you can't even really tell that there are 2 petals there. In the 3 petals below, the central lowest petal is actually lobed, so it looks like 2 petals, but it's not, it's 1 petal. So you need to keep those sorts of things straight when you're looking at the mint family. 2 fused petals at the top, 3 fused petals below to make the lower lip. Sepals are 5, and they are fused, usually forming a tubular calyx. The leaves are opposite, and they're attached to a square stem. So opposite leaves on a square stem, you know, when you see that, think mint and look for other characteristics to confirm it. Not only are the leaves opposite on square stems, but they often have a spicy or really more of just a minty odor. You know, if you think spearmint or other odors like that, that's what you would expect in the mint family. Now we come to the Wildflowers, or the Snapdragon family. And as I said, we need to compare this family to the Lamiaceae, because a lot of the members of the Wildflowers look pretty similar to mints. So we want to look at why they're different. The pistil is one and compound of two sections, but the sections are not further divided or lobed. In this family, the fruit forms a capsule with many seeds, and the style remains attached, as you see in the speedwell. So there's only two lobes to the fruit, one for each section, and the style is still attached. The stamens can be either 2 or 4. The petals are generally 5. They may look like there's 4, as in speedwell, but that's because we think that as they're developing, 2 of those petals, probably the upper petals, fuse together to form a single petal. The corollas, therefore, are either going to be bowl-shaped or tubular, and if they're tubular, they are generally 2-lipped. 2 petals on the upper side, 3 petals on the lower side or the lower lip. Sepals are generally 5 or sometimes 4 and fused at the base. Leaves are usually opposite on a round stem. Now you can find some members of the family that have alternate leaves, but generally opposite leaves on a round stem. So that's those two families that are very similar looking, mint family and the Scrophulariaceae or the Snapdragon family. Now we come to the daisy or composite family, the Asteraceae. This is a very important family, not so much in the spring, but definitely in the summer and fall. The flowers are in false flower composite heads. So they're sort of like the Euphorbiaceae that way, but not to the extreme extent. In these flowers, the individual flowers, which we would call florets in the head, have basically all the parts. The pistil is one and compound with 2 sections. And here you can see in the flowers that are dissected out of the daisy, that's from the center of the daisy, you see at the tip 2 little style branches saying that the pistil has 2 parts. Same way with the dandelion. Okay, so you see that little floret or flower, little tiny flower with the style showing. The fruit is a single nutlet. It develops from the ovary, which is an inferior ovary with only a single ovule in it. So obviously these little florets are not going to be very big, so they have a very small ovary with only a single ovule in it that develops into a single seed and a nutlet. The stamens are 5. Now I said before, when we were talking about stamens being fused together, they can be fused into a tube. In this family they are, but they're very tiny and they may be hard for you to see that tube. But in this illustration there is the stamen tube around the style of the pistil. So the style actually grows up through the middle of that stamen tube. Stamen tube to the dandelion as well. That's the little bit thicker part that you see below the stigma and the top of the style. Petals are 5. Now they can form a little tube with 5 lobes radiating, like we see in the central flowers from the daisy, or they can be fused into a single strap-like structure that looks like a petal. So in the flower head, the false flower head, in a daisy, what looks like petals around the outside, those are actually strap-shaped flowers. So now the strap-shaped flowers are called ray flowers or ray florets, and the small ones that have 5 radiating lobes are called disc florets. So you want to keep those in mind when we start talking about the members of the Asteraceae. The sepals form either parachutes or barbs on those nutlets. And this is basically serving to disperse those nutlets either in wind or catching in fur or on clothing. Okay, leaves are often with an acrid resinous odor. Now we come to the last family we need to talk about, and that is the Liliaceae. This is the lily family in the broad sense. In books today you'll see them often split into smaller families, unless the author is going by an older classification. But I'm using the broader sense, the broader classification for this class. The pistil is one compound of 3 sections. So you can see a cross section through developing fruit of the trout lily. You can see there are 3 sections in it. Stamens are 6. You can see the 6 stamens very clearly in these pictures. Now, the petals can appear to be either 6 or appear to be 3. So there are 3 petals in the trillium. In the trout lily, it looks like 6 petals. I've got petals in quotes because technically only 3 of those are petals. The other 3 are sepals. So we would say the sepals are 3, but they're not obviously sepals because they will be petal-like. So when you look at a flower like the trout lily, you're going to think, oh, 6 petals. It's not really true, but for the purpose here, we'll just say it has 6 petals. And in the trillium, we'd say 3 petals and 3 sepals. And the leaves are strap-shaped to elliptic. So some may be quite narrow and linear. In the trout lily, they are elliptic. But in all cases, they will have parallel venation. So that then wraps up the families that I think are important for you to know, to try to memorize those characters that I gave in bold. As I said, if you go out and you look at a plant and you run through your mind some of those bolded characters, you can very quickly narrow down what family it is, and that will help you a lot. Also, I want to remind you, before we leave this section of the course, to be a good steward and a good citizen, about not collecting in protected parks, asking permission from private owners, and always being considerate of other people who might want to come along and look at the same plants, the same flowers, as well as considerate of the safety of the population, make sure it's not decimated, and considerate of the landowner if you're collecting plants from their land.